party and whether the Village Voice is running APNU AFC.
Well, APNU, let me say PNC, the PNC. And whether it was Rickford Bork who chose the members of the delegation and not Norton. So just this is very revealing for me personally. When the person in charge of a political party says to the media he is not decided as yet who will go with him to Washington, and he will tell the media later, and then an arm of his party already determining who would be members of that delegation, and giving even more prominence to Roysdale Ford than Norton himself. Clearly, this represents the confusion in that party. Now, Mr. Norton has been traveling a lot recently, so I looked through the transcript of all that he said abroad, and I don't think I have to respond to anything. I don't have to respond to anything. It's the same old arguments. PPP discriminates against Afro-Guyanese. PPP doesn't have a plan to run the country. They will do, the APNU has a great track record of economic development in Guyana, that they have a solution for climate change, not that we are wasting time by investing in adaptation measures, and the key thing is to move people to higher ground. So do not abandon the coastline. Do not put in infrastructure here. Let's go to higher ground. This is all that the common thread running through almost all of his engagements abroad. When I looked for substance in any of the discussions he's had or the presentations he made to the diaspora, there's very little to be found. So what struck me again today is his position about the oil and gas sector. When asked about this, he said that they're being guided by a master plan, and when pressed to say who were the people who were guiding them within this master plan, he said that they had some secret policy advisors, and he was unwilling to make public their names now because he was worried that the PPP may criticize them. And he went on to say that they will not say what they're doing next because we will be prepared for that. So imagine at this stage in our development that the leader of the opposition saying that he has some secret policy advisors. We don't know who they are, whether they're foreigners, they're oil and gas companies, whether they're Guyanese or they're the Kool-Aid gang, the fringe elements here, the OGGN or Glenn Lal, whether these are his secret advisors, but he can't tell the country this. The country must not know this because the PPP is vindictive. So we have a real leadership crisis in APNU, The point about him not knowing is one issue, but they have sought here in Guyana and abroad to tone that issue down. I saw some interviews with Ganesh Mahipal, and he said that, he hasn't been trying to undermine Norton. But we know differently. There are lots of people in the PNC who are very dissatisfied with his performance, and they want him out. And that he will try to dig in as much as possible. And one of the reasons for delaying their Congress is that so that he can consolidate his position within that party by creating more groups and more delegates that he controls. So we have seen this group that will be going now. We don't know if that's the exact group, but Village Voice has spoken that will be going to Washington. So I want to speak a bit about Washington and what came out of the meeting with President Ali. Now, from the releases we've seen so far in Guyana, especially the one that came out of the Congressional Black Caucus, a readout of the meeting. So that will give you an indication of what was discussed in that meeting. The readout was very clear that there were 3 sets of issues that were discussed with President Ali. One had to do with energy and food security. The second, enhancing regional economic prosperity. And the third, sustainable environmental stewardship. This was the readout from the Congressional Black Caucus. So clearly, the Congressional Black Caucus believe that we had strategic areas for collaboration between the United States of America and Guyana. They believe that we could work together to enhance regional prosperity, that Guyana can play a very important role on food security and also energy security, not only for this region, but for the United States itself. And I think they believe that we have a great plan to tackle the environment and make a contribution to the fight against climate change. If the team that goes from the PNC were asked any question relating to these matters, what their policies are, they clearly would have a hard time answering any of these questions, because on each of these matters, they have not defined a national position, much less have an international position on the issue. On environmental stewardship, they can go back to that Granger Green State strategy, but that is worthless. It's worthless from the perspective of a contribution to climate change, but earning resources for this country. And in terms of energy and food security, we have a number of secret advisors on the energy side. So no national, and they can't tell the country their national position as yet, so, because they're afraid the PPP will respond to that. So how are they going to tell the Congressional Black Caucus anything about energy security. And on food security, they have a dismal track record of taxation in the agricultural sector. And this where national interest
Considerations from both parties are primary.
So President Ali also at that meeting updated the congressmen on what's happening in Guyana on education and healthcare, public infrastructure, and job creation and expanding prosperity here in Guyana. And we have a track record in these areas too that APNU doesn't have. This year alone, 10 schools would be built, 17,000 scholarships since we got into office, aiming for free University of Guyana education, restoring the children's grant, all of these to support, and many other things to support expanded educational opportunities for our people. And it's done equitably. All of our children got the grant. The scholarships, if you look at the composition of the scholarships, the ethnic and regional composition of the scholarships, you would see that it's also balanced. On healthcare, President Ali updated the Congressional Black Caucus about our activities to expand healthcare across Guyana. And if you look at the investments being made, they're in every region. New Amsterdam, here in Georgetown, in Essequibo, in every part of the country, 4 hinterland regions, the expansion of the upgrade of the hospital in Linden, Skeldon, everywhere else, and more. So again, enhance access for all of our citizens. Public infrastructure, you would see, in spite of what the Kool-Aid gang has been saying, that in every region, public infrastructure and in every community has been growing. So what are they going to say? Nigel Hughes will go to the Congressional Black Caucus or a couple of others and take a list of roads being done in Region 5? Because we have already laid the ground for that, and we would respond appropriately. President Ali then spoke about democracy issues. And I don't know what APNU will be able to say to the Congressional Black Caucus on democracy, since they have stolen every election in the period between 1968 and 1985 and tried to steal the last election too. And you know, congressmen also get briefing. They just would go to the CIA website and they will see that about rigged elections in Guyana, and they would know which party did it. And by now they know that there was an attempt to steal the elections, and we had to fight it off with the help of the United States and 120 countries, 130 countries in the world, and the Caribbean Court of Justice. So they're going to say, again, what are they going to say about that? And the U.S. is, particularly the Democrats, understand this issue a lot, given what is happening in the United States of America and false claims about the last elections there being rigged by some people in the United States of America. So they understand this issue. What are they going to go and talk about? Oh, the list, the voters list. Now, the voters list has been found not to be fraudulent. The voters list has a large number of people because we agreed to continuous registration. We have demonstrated that numerous times, that once you move to continuous registration, and given the constitutional change made in the early 2000s, where we removed the residency requirement from being able to register or get your name on the voters list, that once a person gets onto the voters list, you can't remove them if that person, if he goes abroad. Because the only constitutional requirement to be on the voters list now in the new constitution is Guyanese and 18 years and over. We jointly, the PNC, AFC, everybody agreed to the removal of the residency requirement. So it would be found unconstitutional if you attempt to remove anyone else. We made that clear already. That's a constitutional issue. So they can, and the fact is they did not lose the last elections because of a bloated list. In fact, about 460,000 of the 660 only voted. The second point that we want to make is about biometrics, enhanced biometrics. And we are in favor of enhanced biometrics, provided they don't disenfranchise people. We made that clear because we had the track record of APNU. I saw them saying, oh, it's simply a matter of passing a new law. Well, we passed a new law in the period running up to 1997 that had the support of all the parties. When APNU lost the elections, they challenged the law as unconstitutional, requiring people to vote only with ID cards. The Constitution of Guyana does not say that. So the law was struck down, that it was unconstitutional. The use of the ID card to vote in 1997 was struck down as unconstitutional, although all the parties agreed to that. And Claudette Singh vitiated the elections, and we lost a couple of years of our term. So we're not going to fall into that trap again. So I guess they're going to say, raise the voters list concern. But we've already briefed people about that, not just the congressional black leaders, but also people from across a broad spectrum of political views in the Congress, and also in the legislature, not just Congress, but the legislature in the U.S., because the president met with both congressmen and senators. Use pursue out that a conference that they have in Washington, that this conference, the embassy tried to buy 10 tickets just to test whether they would be broad-based. whether they're interested in Guyana, and a broad range of views. And they were denied the purchase of the 10 tickets to go to Rickford Burke's event, which he'd make money from. He didn't want, they would have been inconvenient to the lies that would be told there. So already people are sensitized as to these issues that will happen in the US. We have made it clear on all of these issues. So when they go up, they will have a hard time. They will talk about discrimination. They will carry a couple of the same road things that Nigel used, the Kool-Aid gang have been using, or no roads are being built. But we've already spoken to the congressional black leaders, including Hakeem Jeffries, about the structure of the government. And if you look at the structure of the overall government system here in Guyana, it's much more inclusive than in the United States of America. And the word inclusion is not a word coined in the United States of America or by Congressman Jeffrey or the Congressional Black Caucus. It came out of our manifesto in the People's Progressive Party's manifesto. And President Ali spoke to that about how we are implementing our manifesto. If you look at the structure of the government system here, in the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, you will see what these congressmen have now been exposed to, a balanced structure. So the fact that Hakeem Jeffries, who was part of that meeting, issued a separate statement, Robert Passad was absolutely right that at the meeting, this issue was not raised about inclusion here by Congressman Jeffries. He spoke because I guess he's mindful of his stature as the minority leader in the Congress. But speaking, Congressman Jeffries and anyone else speaking about inclusion, we don't see that as taking a side, because that is precisely what we're doing. And now that they have been given more facts, and at least we have a medium now to present the facts when they are distorted, we can now supply the facts. They would have a very hard time taking any agenda except in the usual griping agenda to Washington. I saw Dennis Chabrol had that they're to mount a mission to Guyana. That's not true. There's no mission that the Congressional Black Caucus has agreed to mount a mission to Guyana. But we've always been open to congressmen coming down. And in fact, President Ali has invited people to come here many, many times from all the branches of the government, not just the US government, but from other governments in the world. We have nothing to hide about our national policy. In fact, we're very proud of it. We're very proud that we have moved Guyana forward. We have kept our promise, or the promises we made in the manifesto, and that we are managing the country for all of the people of Guyana. President Ali is now also in New York, and he has had several engagements there in the United States of America, and with a broad range of people, not just in Washington, but in New York. He just received an award, and He's been speaking to people who are major influences of public opinion, because we need to get the narrative of the story, the wonderful story taking place now in our country, onto the global stage. And he's been doing a great job at that. A few nights ago, he was with President Clinton. I had the good fortune of also speaking to President Clinton on the phone from that engagement. And people may not know, but when we started the LCDS, in fact, the process running up to the LCDS in the period, the last term in office, President Clinton had deployed a couple of people here to assist and advise on, particularly on the MRV systems. Because at that time, we were trying to build this model that would not only be credible globally, but also could be replicated by other countries and address the concerns raised by many in the UNFCCC negotiations as to why forests should not be, and forest carbon should not be part of the compliance market. And so monitoring, reporting, verification, satellite probing was a crucial part of measuring results. And he deployed some people in that period. I thought he did not remember, and he remembered it. So the President Ali has been doing a great job bringing the story of Guyana to the rest of the world. And so what is this story? I saw Ramjatan saying that the IMF produced a half-baked assessment of Guyana's economy. Now, whether it's half-baked, a quarter-baked, 1/10 baked, or 100th baked, Ramjatan will not understand any of it. Because the assessment goes beyond the realm that he is comfortable in. And that realm is one of scandals, lies, and half-truths. And so to have Ramjatan comment on an IMF report. Now, the IMF is a global organization. Even Glenn Lal uses the IMF as an authority on many issues. To think that the technical people that they deploy in this country would put in a report on essentially technical matters, falsehoods, because it is a little out of the way, in fact, and I'm being very generous when I say that. So the report, the Article 4 consultation will go to the board soon, but the IMF, I'm not going to go through Ramjatan's nonsense because it pains me to do so, and it had no edifying moment for the people of this country. It's just a lot of nonsense that he talks. But let me go through what the concluding statement of the 2023 Article 4 mission that they issued. So I can spend a very long time on this because there are a lot of technical matters here, and I don't want to do that today. So I'm just going to go to a few key heads that they highlighted in the report. So the first says the Guyanese economy continues to grow very rapidly, supported by the government's modernization plans, including the unparalleled oil sector expansion. So clearly, there is a government modernization plan that they have seen and they're reporting on. You would recall that our counterparts, the opposition, they're keeping their plan secret. So far, they had nothing to be proud of in the 5 years, but the new plan they're keeping secret. So it goes on to say, oil production is ramping up with coming on stream of a third oil field, and growth in the non-oil sector is supported by the implementation of a fast-paced public sector investment program focusing on providing transportation, housing, flood management infrastructure, and raising human capital. So we took time to explain to them, show them all the documents about our plans to raise the quality of human capital in Guyana to respond to the new economy. That includes health plans, education plans, etc. They saw the rapid expansion of the housing program that was practically non-existent on the APNU. They've seen not just the infrastructure programs, power, highways, etc., but the community-based infrastructure. So that's the first issue they raise. Secondly, after a strong 2022, in the first half of 2023, real non-oil GDP grew by 12.3%. So non-oil GDP grew by 12.3%, one of the highest figures in the world for non-oil GDP. CPI inflation reached 7.2% at the end of 2022, in line with other countries in the region. So you would recall people talking about cost of living. Norton and all the Starbuck News has a running series on cost of living. What they're saying here is the CPI last year, at the end of last year, that's a consumer price index, reached 7.2 or grew by 7.2%, in line with the other countries in the region. What was different here in Guyana is our mitigating measures. Last year, we paid out about $5 billion directly to assist people on cost of living measures. We lowered the freight charges. We levied the taxes on lower freight charges. We did not increase water and electricity prices. We absorbed all of the cost on water and electricity prices. So there's a series of intervention measures that we put in place to beat the CPI increase, the consumer price index increase. So, but our inflation was not unusual because it was in line with other countries in the region, including the United States of America. So although we had a massive investment program and our capital budget grew by over 100% from the previous year, our inflation was in line with other countries in the region, and they were mitigating measures. And so I continue now from that point and declined to 1.2% on a year-to-year basis in July 2023. So from July 2023 of 2022 to July 2023, the consumer price index only grew by 1.2%, lower than many countries. So that meant that the prices had started abating, and what we're already seeing in the market. Of course, you're going to have some seasonal issues, like with the drought. We've seen an escalation in the price of vegetables and other things, because lots of the farmers are calling on us to see if we can get fresh water to them. They can't water their vegetable farms and a whole range of stuff because of the prolonged period of the dry season. So two important points made there: that there was rapid growth in the economy. We have a government modernization plan that is supporting this growth, that the consumer price index in Guyana has grown in line with regional average, and there were mitigating measures in Guyana's case, and now it has declined seriously. The next headline says, the outlook for medium-term growth is better than ever before. I'm not going to explain that to people. That's the next one here. The fiscal and monetary policy mix is appropriate at this time. So that means an endorsement of both our fiscal and monetary policies. Remember, we don't have an IMF program, so they don't tell us what monetary or fiscal policies to put in place, unlike countries that are in a program. They come and review after they review. That is why these Article 4 consultations are done in every economy in the world. They just come and assess your national plans, unlike some countries that are part of the program where the IMF, you have to agree with the IMF on what fiscal and monetary policies to pursue. The fourth head says the authorities' commitment to fiscal discipline is welcome and allows for a balanced growth path. So they're praising our commitment to fiscal discipline to allow a balanced growth path. So the diversification of the economy, the balanced growth path, the fiscal discipline includes the contracting of debt too, and our careful policy of doing so. I've explained that at length at another press conference that we had before about how the debt to GDP ratio and the debt service, that is the revenue to GDP ratio, both have declined significantly. So that is a great head. Then it says, given the medium-term risk of inflationary pressure and real exchange rate appreciation, something that we're talking about, they recommended that a continued focus on maintaining macroeconomic stability through an appropriate policy mix. I've come here many times and spoken about the need to watch, be careful about the Dutch disease, an overheating economy, to be cautious about the outer years and not building a budget based on that may decline because of lower oil prices or climate change, the net zero measures kicking in, and therefore the need to be careful about an expansionary current account policy of the budget, the current account, not the capital account of the budget. You would recall two things. And this is not because Glenn Lal, I see they pointed out that the IMF said, or someone said, that there will be a shortfall in the oil and gas revenue by $2 million, $2 million US dollars. And therefore, the government is having this that they had warned that this could happen. We warned that before, but $2 million from, I think, 243 to 239 or something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's 2 million US. It's nothing. It's just the prices will come and go up like that. If prices globally fall, now they're on the rise again. So the numbers we put in the budget, if we sell now because of growing oil prices, the figure will be higher than before. But notwithstanding what I just mentioned, that we had cautioned this even ourselves. So you would recall that Norton and the others were dismissive of concepts like expansionary, like overheating and Dutch disease. They think, oh, get all the money, pay it out. Pay out, Glenn Lal says, $12 million a year for every person in Guyana will get $12 million, 60,000 US. Not only we would not have enough money from the whole oil and gas sector, if Exxon took not a single cent in profit, or they gave us all the money, we wouldn't be able to fund that. But this is the same person cautioning when you have a 2 million shortfall to say be careful about how you're building your budget, but then wants to pay out because it could harm you in future years, but then wants to pay out $12 million a year without working. Wouldn't that be expansionary? This consumer price index will just blow up if that happens, leaving out our inability to finance it. And so when Norton and the others say, forget these concepts, you pay the money out here and there and everywhere else, then it makes you understand that clearly they don't have a plan and they're just saying these things to fool people and to get them to support them. The staff strongly support the authorities' efforts to maintain financial stability. They support our efforts to maintain financial support. That's another head. Staff commend the authorities' progress in strengthening AML, CFT, governance, anti-corruption frameworks, and support further advances in their effective implementation. This didn't go down well with APNU because there are specific measures that we introduced that would deal with this. Staff commend the authorities' progress to strengthen the management of oil wealth and its fiscal transparency, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But they have reviewed all that we have done since we got into office, and this is their assessment. The progress to strengthen the support, commend the authorities on the progress to strengthen the management of oil wealth and fiscal transparency. The next head, staff laud the authorities' climate efforts. The next head, staff strongly support the authorities' efforts to improve the business climate and address labor shortages. Next head, staff welcome the authorities' efforts to modernize official statistics, which the IMF is supporting through capacity development. This is what irked Ramjatan, and APNU. I thought Norton ignored it totally because it was an entirely positive assessment of our overall strategy. You hear the areas that it ran from fiscal policy to monetary policy to modernization plan, human capacity development, infrastructure for future growth, climate plans, official statistics, AML, CFT, anti-corruption framework, oil and gas, strengthening this of the sector, etc. That is it. An overall complete assessment of all that we are doing in a whole range of sectors. And this is done by the IMF. And you're going to see the full report shortly. So there are a few things before I go on to the oil and gas sector. I saw a report which says that as I was preparing for this press conference, government still to gazette applications for new oil blocks despite legal requirement. So it speaks about that. I was told by the ministry, again, this is what the ministry sent to me, that on December 9th, 2022, that this was done. So this is a Kaicho News headline. Asked the ministry, and they said to me that this was done on this date, outlining the coordinates of all 14 blocks, that this was done in that period. The audit issue, so we come back to the audit issue here. There are some other matters. So let me make this clear. I've seen a lot of comments about the audit issue. And these comments are justifiable. The comments are justifiable. But the fact that we are debating this matter is only because of how this government has approached the oil and gas sector. Had this happened on the APNU, we wouldn't have known about the issue years from now. Like what happened with the 2016 contract, the signing bonus. It took us years to find this out. Now, we have not concluded this matter as yet, but we discovered it largely because of how transparent we have been. Now, you would recall that particularly the Starbuck News, when they raised this matter about the slot in concluding the audits, I said to them that this is a matter that the politicians will not interfere with. That it's purely for the technical staff and the technical agency, namely the GRA, to deal with that matter. that if we're not going to rush any staff member or of the GRA or the GRA to conclude the matter until they are ready to do so in their own judgment. And because we believe that politicians must not get involved in, they don't have the capability. You need accounting, auditing capability, and they must not get involved in these matters. Now, we know that the agreement, the 2016 agreement, vested the authority to conduct audits in the minister. And pursuant to that, the minister has hired IHS Markit under APNU, and then the consortium under the People's Progressive Party to audit the post-2017 costs, 2017 to 2020. So those were done pursuant to the agreement. However, policy-wise, we said that our advisors were the GRA. The ministry had no capability to address the findings of the audit, and therefore the government's policy advisor, sole policy advisor, without whose opinion on these matters we were not going to move further, was the GRA. So it was not in conflict with what the agreement had. The agreement was pursued, the auditors were hired, but their reports were lodged with the Guyana Revenue Authority to review. The GRA has to advise the government, and only the GRA has to advise the government as to what we should conclude the audits on. If they did so, from what I gather now, on the 8th of August, that we should close the audit. Subsequent to that, Vikram Bharrat and I sat in a meeting where the staff of the ministry said to us that figure had come down to $3 million. That is what we reported here. Now, how many times when the Starbuck News particularly raised this issue, I said, station must speak on audit and capability. Go to the GRA. And I guess that it's because of that engagement with GRA, we discovered that on the 8th of August, a letter was sent to the ministry. That was not copied to me. So it was because of the transparency, because we said we allowed the GRA to speak to the reporters. Under APNU, that would not have happened. If there was any attempt to cover this up, we didn't say, talk to the GRA. Get the GRA, we are not speaking about this. I'm reluctant. Many times at this very press conference, I'm reluctant to deal with audits. That's a technical matter. Now Starbuck News said that I should not, maybe I spoke out of turn in an editorial. But my engagement here, which may have to change now, is a oversight, not line management. Oversight of the oil and gas sector. I do not have a single staff in the office of the president in this oversight role in the oil and gas sector. So I deal with policy mainly, not implementation of policy. I have to rely on reports from the sector on implementation matters. So when we discuss, for example, the reform agenda that we promise, the local content law, that's policy, I dealt with from my office. They had to come to my office, the AG, everyone. The petroleum, the new PSA came to my office because that's new policy. The petroleum activities bill, my office. I am not charged, and I don't want to be, with the daily implementation of any of these issues. So we have to work based on reports. When I come to this press conference, I come with a report from the ministry. The minister himself, when I spoke with him, said although he sat in that meeting when we had the briefing, he also, although he has line responsibility, he thought that this was the GRA's position, given that we had publicly stated that the GRA is the government's advisor on this issue, and the GRA will have the final say in terms of advice, how the audit is concluded. So I spoke with President Ali, and the minister still, I agree that there should be a full investigation of this matter, and the minister still has to give a full report to the cabinet on what took place. I saw a report saying that it's because there is no commission that we have this confusion, Petroleum Commission. But this, just imagine if there was no political oversight and it was done only at the commission, and the commission is made up only of technical people, then this probably would have gone through. So that's the converse of it, because a commission which is entirely staffed by technical people who are not accountable to the electorate, if they made such a decision and the politicians couldn't say, we don't agree with that, we want GRA to deal with it, what would have been the outcome? So it could have been worse. So my position today is the same. We are waiting. We believe that there should be a full investigation. But we have not concluded the audit as yet, because now the ministry has to write Exxon, and that letter has not been written, to say the GRA, our advisor's last position is this, and this is our position. No money has been stolen. It's not like somebody has to give explanations how they engage with Exxon after this. And I believe also that we have to have a policy where people who, at the technical level particularly, who engage with the oil and gas companies or executives, that they must seek the explicit clearance from the ministry, and they must report back on the nature of every engagement. Almost a disclosure policy. It is something that that I intend to propose to the cabinet, because we would never know what discussions actually take place in the interactions between the oil and gas companies and staff at the technical level. So clearly, this is not, I saw APNU saying, oh, they complain about the 18 million signing bonus. They attempted to steal the 18 million bonus by transfer it out of, not keeping it in the consolidated fund. Here you have a government that has openly, I've several times spoken to the Starbuck News and many others, talked to the GRA, who have encouraged the technical agencies to speak to the media. We have done this. We have encouraged GRA publicly, I've done so here, to speak to the media. It was because of that engagement with the media that this matter came to light, which should be celebrated. Not the fact that this matter took place, because that in itself is a serious matter, but the transparency with which things have been done by this government. So these are some of the matters I wanted to do this. I just end there then. Thanks.
Kaiser News, good afternoon. There's a mic. Kiana Wilberg, Kaiser News, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. A few questions first on the audit. You said that you support a full investigation into this matter and having it reported to Cabinet. Can you say if, one, ExxonMobil would be part of this investigation, because they would have engaged, their officials obviously have engaged the Ministry's Petroleum Unit? That's one. Two, is government prepared at this point in time to disclose the names of the individuals who were part of this discussion with Exxon? And three, the opposition, I believe specifically the Shadow Minister, David Patterson, had called on government to say if it believes that the acceptance by the ministry of $211 million in expenses would weaken any position that you may have during arbitration.
Yeah.
It accepts the 214, and that cost was subsequently reduced to $3 million.
So the last question, if it's an unauthorized action, on the last question, if it's unauthorized, as the minister said, he didn't know about it, it took place without his explicit or implicit agreement, and therefore I don't believe it would weaken our claims at any arbitration that they may follow. That's the first point. Secondly, I would want to await the full report from the minister to the cabinet, which will then the ministry would have to disclose to the public too. At that point in time, then we'd be able to identify who all the people are, who did this unauthorized contact with Exxon, and when it took place. And the third issue was, Exxon, of course they would have to be part of it, because not Exxon has to be part. We're not accepting this. We're not accepting anything that Exxon sent subsequently to the closure of the audit by GRA. And if the closure is 211, that's it. Okay? So we don't know what they sent, and I'm not really interested in it, because that could be sent and claimed that arbitration should we go there. I'm more interested in who authorized this and why this contact after the GRA had said we're closing it at this stage.
Finally, on the audit matter, just as a means of clarifying any loophole that Exxon may have at its disposal to exploit, the contract says that there's a 2-year timeline, as we've acknowledged before, on auditing. However, government has made it clear.
Remember, I dealt with this issue because we had gone long past the 2 years, even before. So we don't believe that claim, and they have said this publicly. I think the newspapers asked Exxon this some years ago, and they said that the audits, the agreement says that their expenditure must be audited and they will comply with the audit, notwithstanding the timelines in the PSA.
Okay. That was very clear to me, but what I'm asking is government, do you have anything concrete to protect yourself in the event that Exxon or someone decides to walk back on their word?
The way this goes is that they have kept engaging long past the 2 years. And secondly, this company here, they have a lot invested in Guyana. I think they realize that they have to work in a collaborative manner with the government and people of this country, because their prosperity is linked closely to that of ours. And I think it is in that context that they mentioned this issue. So we do not anticipate any withdrawal from that position.
On a second topic, sir, we've seen a very outrageous statement from Venezuela now extending its claim to our licensing round. Can you say if this is something that government was caught by surprise? Because normally during a licensing round, you'd have to examine all of the risk factors. Was this something that was completely caught you by surprise? And secondly, have you heard from any of the investors or bidders that they're concerned about this statement?
So we have not heard from any of the bidders that they're concerned about the statement. And it's not surprising that Venezuela would issue this statement. They have done so almost for every major event when we've tried to utilize the economic resources of our country, both on land and in our exclusive economic zone. So it was not surprising that they would issue such a statement, but you've seen the appropriate response from the government of Guyana, and you have seen statements from the OAS and the US government and several others who have firmly rejected this aggressive posture of Venezuela.
And to confirm, there will be no pulling back from Guyana on us going through with our licensing round and future plans?
No, this is our sovereign Guyanese territory, and the 14 blocks are all in our exclusive economic zone.
Good afternoon, Vice President Kim King, Oil Now. You responded to a Kaichur News article about the legal requirement to gazette applications for oil blocks. The December 9, 2022 gazetted document you referred to, it's not in relation to that. The Gazette is about the government putting a notice out on blocks that will be offered in the auction. But it is in the new Petroleum Activities Act that was put in place last month, or the month before, that requires the government to now gazette applications made by companies for oil blocks, and that has not happened. And so it's two different things.
So this was a notice that they gave me too. So relating to what? This is under the Petroleum Activities Act. This is the notice. Yeah, this might be gazetted, but this is the notice that was sent. I don't see it in the gazette form, but it could be gazetted.
Well, it's required by law.
Yes, but this is the notice.
Okay.
Here. So I have the notice.
And that includes details of the applications?
Yeah.
By the companies?
The private companies, no, this is for mainly the fiscal terms, etc. These are all the terms of the auction.
Okay. On the matter of the audit, you talked about waiting for a full report from the ministry on what went wrong. In the ministry statement, it had talked about the government taking appropriate action to discipline wrongdoers.
Yes, well, I didn't. What
I want
you
to know
said, the
if
ministry.
The ministry said that disciplinary action will be taken or something like that.
Well,
you can't currently speak to the appropriateness of disciplinary actions.
No,
right now.
because that would follow the report.
Okay. Okay, you've canceled several of my questions. So you spoke about you not being involved in the oversight role of the oil sector, that you deal only with policy making.
No. That's not what I said.
You are not involved in direct oversight of the oil sector,
no,
but you deal with policy making.
I am involved in oversight.
But not day-to-day line management.
Okay.
You got it wrong. Yeah. Sorry. I'll give the microphone to someone else. Yeah.
Final question. Was on Kiana's question about whether the action was authorized, was the minister's approval required for the action that was taken?
I guess engagement, first of all, if the ministers, they were changing a policy. The government's policy is we contract through the ministry the auditors. We get the reports, then these reports are sent to the GRA. The GRA will examine the reports as our advisor, and they will advise us on the course of action to pursue, finalize or not. So in that course of action or that policy, there is no room for anyone to subsequently engage directly with the oil and gas companies for further clarification. If that is needed, the GRA will write us, say, here is the need for further clarification, the following issues we need. And then through that process, the ministry may authorize someone to get engaged in that. So clearly this was a departure from what is publicly known.
Okay, finally, who are your advisors on oil and gas matters?
I don't have advisors. I work with the consultants. You can say the consultants who have worked with us on drafting. I deal with policy issues mainly. So one, it is like when we dealt with the local content law, we hired a group of people to draft the law. We had the G chambers involved. We had some from Ghana, or some advisors from Ghana. these were the people we work with. So on every one of these policy issues, we work with a different group of advisors. So it's not a static one person to advise on everything. It is based on the policy at hand. The same thing with IHS Market. When we look at and the petroleum, the new PSA, it was IHS Market, Qatar, and some others who worked with us on it. So that is it. It changes based on the nature of the policy, not a single person doing one thing all the time.
Dr. Jagdeo, Antonio Day from Saarbrück News. I just have a few questions. You mentioned that you will be writing to ExxonMobil. Are you saying definitively that the government or yourself personally?
What do you mean, like?
I'm making reference to the audit.
When I say we, right? When I say we, generally, it means the government, not we means the government. Even when I speak of the opposition, sometimes I speak of it as we. So when Granger gave the extension, and we, for example, the one with the 1-year extension for the Stabroek block, and we decided that we'll go forward with it. I spoke of the effort as we, although it was done under the last government, because that's how I see it as government, we. So when I say we, I mean the final, it has to be government, not personal, not personal. Okay. I don't write Exxon personally. I've not sent a single correspondence to Exxon personally. Every one of these issues relating to the oil and gas sector, that is the implementation of audit, the Act, the Petroleum Activities Act and the Petroleum Act, they're administered by a line agency, and they're the official point of contact. Kimal had it wrong, but I said I have oversight, but I exercise that oversight only on policy issues. Now, as I said before, I may need to change my approach to this matter. I may have to create a small unit who will go down and verify, since the reports that come to me, I present to the public often, and to verify that these reports are accurate, because I've had calls on several occasions, and a few of the reporters here are very familiar with what I'm talking about, that when my report, the last report that I got, you recall, they said to me that the relinquishment was done in 2019, and I just came out of a briefing. They said the relinquishment was done in 2022, when it was done in 2019, having come just from a meeting and a briefing. And so that I may have to change that approach in this regard, but the we there meant government.
Okay, Dr. Jagdeo, I wanted to find out from you, would you say that there was a miscommunication in regard with the disputed figures for the audit? Because I know initially it has been $214 million, yeah, but it has now downsized to $3 million. Yeah. And there were reports that it appears as if the authority, the petroleum unit, the information did not emanate from the GRA. So could you be able to answer that question?
Yes, well, that is precisely what the report to Cabinet will show. How after, you'd recall that several times on the Stabroek News with Marcel here, and they've asked, the audit question came up in the Stabroek News first, I think, came up there for a while. And several times I say, the GRA must speak, GRA is the authority, etc. They would have to explain after the GRA advice to close the audit at a particular figure, how they reported to the minister and I that figure had changed after the GRA had done that.
Into the investigation, ExxonMobil, since they are the subject here, they may be a part of the...
No, I did not. That's... I said no.
Okay, so if...
Okay. So I said that... Let me go back. I said that I'm not interested in what they submitted after the letter from the GRA closing the audit at a particular figure, advising us. Because those supporting documents could be presented should we go to arbitration, okay, on the part of Exxon. I'm very interested in finding out how they will engage after knowing that GRA was the one established by the policymakers to have the final call as our advisors on the matter. So that is what I'm interested in the audit.
And if ExxonMobil reneges in that regard, what would be the government's recourse?
Reneges in like what?
In terms of if they don't fulfill this engagement.
Which engagement?
Okay, you said that based on the investigation, they're not a part of that. But if you said you're not interested in whatever information that comes from them, but if, let's say that they may be a party that is blamed for that, and they refuse to admit their wrongdoings, what would be the government's recourse in that part?
So really, the exercise that the submission, I don't know what was submitted, okay, to justify moving it from 211 to 11 and then 3. That's what we were told. 11 and then 3. I don't know what supporting document was submitted to the ministry. What I know of is that the 211 is where we close the audit. We're not interested in any supporting document at this stage. If that is what our advisors say, we close at 211, then we have a dispute with Exxon as to the figures. And that dispute in the agreement says could be resolved through arbitration, at which both parties then present their case to an independent panel. And then the independent panel would say, okay, or an independent person or panel. And that person will say, okay, it's justified or it's not justified. So you understand? Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo.
Good afternoon.
I have a few questions. The first one is, do you agree with the IMF's advice that oil producing nations should scale back on granting tax breaks to oil companies and subsidies and so forth?
I agree.
Okay. Straightforward.
Which we have done through the new PSA.
Okay, great. The government had initially blamed climate change for the decline in fish stock and the troubles that fishermen have been facing, but revealing that oil production could potentially affect the fish in Guyana's water. Given that this is the fact, who will compensate the fishermen and so forth if their livelihood should be affected?
The UN organized when there was a claim by Glenn and the others that all the fish ran away from Guyana because of climate change. Right? And not climate change, because of the oil and gas industry. And they said that that was not supported by scientific facts. That it had to do a lot with fresh water going further out into the sea in the period of heavy rainfall, etc. So salinity or fresh water, when you have heavy rainy season, can affect the fish stock and the migration patterns along the coast. That was their conclusion. Now, I don't know that the EPA did a study about patterns of migration of fish stocks. They have not done so, because I would be happy to see that study to inform more policy making in the industry. They have not done so, as far as I'm concerned. The EIA, what the EIA would do is the EIA would say, what are the worst case scenarios? So if there is a spill, what would be the worst case scenario? It would potentially have an impact on our fishermen, navigation, waters, flora and fauna, a whole range of stuff. And how do you minimize or how do you mitigate? You can't not develop the industry, or else if that was the case, globally there would be no oil industry, because everywhere in the world they have potential impact. Every oil well would have a potential impact. It may never come to pass, but what happens if it blows? It would have a potential impact in the environment. If you take that approach, we do nothing because of potential impact, then you wouldn't have no industry around the world. We wouldn't be able to drive our cars, do nothing, basically, generate power, etc. So you have to mitigate against potential impact. You have to demonstrate that should this happen, I have the capability to address it, and I will address it through these measures. And that is what the EIAs would do. The EIAs for specific projects. One time Starbucks said they didn't do an economic costing of it, but that's not the purpose of the EIA. And I explained that, I think, last week, that is for another sort of engagement where you look at worst case scenarios for the country. But that has to constantly be adjusted based on your growing capacity to address spills. So for example, if we have a capping stock in the country, you can, and you had, like, say you didn't have it, the well blows out, and then maybe you take about 10, 15 days to get it. If it's in the country, you can deploy it in maybe 3 days, 5 days. So then you minimize the level of the spill.
Okay, just to give you some more, based on the recent public consultation they had, the biologists explained that daily oil production could have an impact on the fish eggs, which if there's no eggs, fish population will decline. So it's not only the spill, there's other activities that would potentially impact the fish.
Yeah, but the thing is that potentially impact, but as I said before, this is assessed by the FAO about fishing stocks in the country, and they found it not to affect the fishing stock. And those are the... So if this is a spill on fishing egg.
This is like, the daily production, like a cooling system when they have to take some seawater, mix it to cool the Well, yeah, like those stuff. Yeah, the different discharges and so forth.
Okay. But we have insisted on when we change the permits, and if you have an opportunity to just look at the old permits that were done on the APNU and look at these new permits, we have progressively insisted, or we have insisted that progressively there has to be treated water to a higher standard. And so the standard now is an international standard. There are many parts of this world where water is not treated to the standard we're treating it before it's discharged back into the ocean. And many parts of the world where they're just throwing it back in an untreated fashion.
The next question is, recently we see the AG taking a stance, or the government taking a stance, that reckless road users should pay for damage to property, but or damage when in case of accidents and so forth. What about the industrial sector, whereby we have these container trucks and machines that could damage the roadways? Will a similar system be put in place for them?
I think people who damage public infrastructure, they should pay for it. It's as simple as that, wherever this occurs. And this is proliferation of something else we got. So people don't have, we're trying to clean up the roadways and stuff like that. We were to put in a commercial system. For example, if you want a billboard, you should buy this space and then put up a proper billboard, and then we can utilize the money to maintain the parapet just by the billboard. So our highways look clean along the sides and stuff. People have a habit now. If they have a product, they just go and build a billboard just like that. Today I came down, some of the billboards are being taken down again. People just go, they stick up 2 things there, they put on their billboard. They get some agency to do it without any authority. Without any authority. If they were to do that in another country, they'll be charged. They would have a whole heap of penalties. But in this country, people just go and they put up whatever they want. They make the place dirty. It looks like the cardboards. I come up the East Coast, I see a lot of cardboard they're nailing what these shows on all of the posts. After the cardboards thing, I said to our people and the others, take down the party flags because we still have some party flags on the land